Okay.
Fourth door.
In Georgia, Florida?
Here.
So I'd like to say welcome to everybody for coming out. And don't worry about your car getting towed away, because they don't tow cars, they just put signs out there that says that they do, to try and tell people that they don't, so they don't park here for the Braves game. Now, we have had instances where they do end up seeing a bunch of people coming in and parking and seeing them walking off. So if they are going to end up calling tow trucks, then they will send somebody up and they will end up saying, okay, everybody that's with Metrolina, here's something that you can put in your dashboard.
North Metro.
Yes, that place.
United North Carolina.
You know, it's all a blur right now. Yeah, okay, North Metro, Metrolina is the one that we have in Charlotte. But anyway, either way, they would come up and say, you know, put one of these in your dashboard. We're gonna call tow trucks for people that are parking illegally. And so they have guaranteed me that they'll always come up and say something before they end up towing anybody. And it's in my contract that if anybody ever gets towed, then they will end up reimburse the problem. Okay,
Oh, for a new car.
Yeah, I thought you said we're gonna get a new car. I'm with him.
Cool.
Get a new car.
No. You know, I can't even get a new car because of my significant other.
Uh-oh.
You know? All right, so let's look at this, okay? All right, before we get started, let's end up seeing how many of you in here have a significant other? Okay? How many of you know how important it is to make sure that you pick the right significant other?
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, first time,
I'm
second
with
time,
her.
third time. How you doing, Tim?
Only 2 strikes.
So, I want to point out to you why it is so important on when you pick out your significant other. So let's look at it. Let's take the word significant. Sign if I can't. How many of you did not see that before? You pick your significant other because they can sign if I can't. All right? One of you's got to have good credit. The reason why I know this is because there's a lot of people out there that are getting married to people that have a lot of debt. I want you to keep something in mind. If you end up having somebody with all the young professionals coming up that have been going to college, you know, and they've got a big degree and all that kind of stuff, chances are they end up having some sort of college debt. If they end up marrying one of your siblings, guess who shares the debt now?
That sibling.
That sibling, okay? So once you end up getting married, then both people's credit reports are affected by that. How many of you didn't think about that one? Okay, so significant other, sign if I can, all right? So, now, before we get started and everything, then I would like to end up giving Joe an opportunity to stand up and talk about your club, your group, your section, your meeting.
Okay. My name's Joe Thompson. I've been doing this since 2000. I went into commercial in 2007. Reason I'm here is because Pete and Tony are 2 of the best in the country. I mean, not only do they know what they're saying, they're actually legitimate and tell you the truth and help you, as opposed to hose you for money. You know, I tell a lot of people, be careful to who you're listening to when you're going out to speakers, especially the ones that say there's only one best technique. There is no one. Well, I won't say there's always a best technique at that point in time, but 2 months later, it might not be. And if you learn more techniques, you have more tools to close. But I've been having a meeting that I started in 2004. I'm now going on 20 years. It's called Haves and Wants. It meets every Thursday. No, we're not meeting this Thursday. It's the 4th of July. But we meet weekly. And over that period of time, I've done, at this point that I know of, $861 million. Okay, no, I didn't get part of all of it. But I have gotten parts of a whole bunch of it. And essentially everything I do is marketing through my meeting. And one of the other things I tell people, don't lie, cheat, or steal. And a deal is doable if it's good for both parties. Now by good, I mean it meets what they need, not what they want. Because I don't know if Tony would agree with this, but I don't give a rat's ass what they want. I want to know what they need. And if I can meet their needs and I know it, then I have the right to ask them to go to contract. But every Thursday, 1:30 at the Hudson Grill on Roswell Road.
All right, thank you, Joe.
Not this week.
Not this week, July 4th. Thank you, Joe. All right, and also, we end up having some other guests that are in here that are highly respected by us. Darlene, would you like to stand up and say hello?
Hello, I'm Darlene Coppell. Hey, good to see you guys. Queen of Foreclosures, been in it since 1990 and started off real slow. Took me a year to buy my first deal, and then went to a lot of places like this and started networking and got a lot of education. And by the mid-90s, I started learning some deals like subject to and owner finance and lease option and all that good stuff. And then by 2000, started going to the steps and learned everything I need to know about foreclosures here in Georgia. So unfortunately, back to basics, knocking on doors. I like the big damn hammer, actually, going to the steps. Yeah, that's me, foreclosures. Come see me at the end if you want to talk foreclosures.
All right, thanks, Darlene. And so we also have something going on to where we have what we call pods. We are a club that started the idea of doing pods. That's where we end up getting together 4 people at a time and put them with a coach. Not everybody has the same amount of money to invest. Not everybody is somebody that ends up having a big mind for doing the deals and stuff. What Tony and I have ended up seeing over the number of years that we've been doing this, which is quite a few, very, very, very many. We have gone all over the country over and over and over again, back and forth to some of the same places, being re-invited, and we see some of the same people in the same chairs, and we end up saying, what have you done since we had, seen you last? And they're going, well, I still haven't pulled the trigger yet, and they basically have been sitting in the audience forever. All right, so we ended up sitting and talking. When I say we, me, Jeff Frank, Laura Baker, Jeff McCann, Joe Thompson, a couple of the other people that were sitting around, and we ended up coming up with an idea of why don't we end up putting a dollar amount that anybody can afford and choose your dollar amount. Start at 1,000, which doesn't really do a whole lot unless you're just gonna end up buying somebody's contract, and nowadays you can't even buy a contract for that. So basically, if you get a group of 4 people to put in $5,000 and have a coach put in $5,000, now you have $25,000 in a pod, okay? And you end up being able to have somebody that coaches you in the 4 people that are putting up the money that might have 1 or 2 under their belt, might not have anything under their belt. But this way we end up getting people involved in deals, because it takes away the fear of using your own money. It takes away the fear of being the only person that's invested in it. It takes away the fear because you have a coach. It takes away the fear because you have something going on, okay? And you might end up, doing a 10,000. And so Joe McCann is somebody who we have been using for that and everything. So Joe is over there. And if you wanted to wave and say hey to everybody, this is Joe.
Jeff
Jeff McCann. I'm sorry, I was looking at Joe waving in the back, and I was thinking, So Jeff McCann.
I have something I bring to the table that not everybody in this room probably has access to. I have a lender who likes me enough to give me a $3 million line of credit to fix and flip properties. They will fund me at 90% of purchase price and 100% of renovation cost. As long as the deal makes money, they'll fund it. And we can do a lot more deals because I bring that to the table. A lot of people can't do deals because they don't have either enough money, enough experience, or enough backing from somebody else to get into a deal. But if you put together a group of 3 or 4 people with $5,000 each, I can bring the rest of the money to the table for the project, and we can get funded, and we can go ahead and do a project. We can do as many times as you like. You wanna do it one time and go, that's fine. You wanna do it 10 times, I'll be here. So the whole idea is do as many as you can, so you learn something off every deal, because they're not all the same.
Great, so how many of y'all think that's a good idea? All right, that's a good thing. Okay, and last but not least, every so often we have somebody who's a local and as well as a national trainer stop in and say hey and everything. Right now we have Bill Cook, nationally known Bill Cook and everything. I've known Bill for over 25 years. Bill's one of the best of the best of the best of the best and everything. He is respected and sought after by the best, and he works with the best and everything. He eats McDonald's with Pete, fortunately, on a regular basis.
Does it get better than that?
Bill Cook, would you like to stand up and just wave at everybody and say hello?
I'm Tim Cook's husband, and I'm here to see the brothers dynamic.
There you go. So thank you very much. And so now I'm going to end up saying this. Y'all are used to seeing me every week. And y'all have heard some of the things that I have done as far as the rehab world. Now you're gonna end up seeing, if you haven't already, because most of you have, some of you have not, the person who got me into real estate, which is my brother Tony Youngs, who is the national leading person on hidden market type properties. He ends up taking people out all over the country. He's been successful in just about every market that you could possibly imagine. He's faced every type of thing that you could do. He's been in 5 boroughs, the 5 boroughs in New York, in the snow, and come out with properties and everything without getting a gun pulled on him or anything. So anyway, if you'd like to end up saying hello to the person who got me in real estate, then my brother Tony Youngs. Come on out, Tony. Yeah, if you're ready to come on up. I took him by surprise.
All 5 boroughs?
Yes, all 5.
So what we're going to do is, we're gonna end up taking questions. We'll end up giving some answers. Obviously, for those of you who don't know, for decades, Tony and I did real estate boot camps together for some of the top people that you would have seen on TV. Over and over and over and over and over again, and so we had 14 consecutive awards for the top-rated foreclosure rehab boot camp in the country, given to us. 14 consecutive awards, and that was pretty damn good and everything. And and we weren't the ones that were actually making all the money. It was the TV people that was making all the money. Now, I'm not saying that what we were making was not good, but they were making real good. They were flying, they were buying jets, and we were flying first class. So, we couldn't buy a jet, but we leased a few of them. But anyway, so anybody who ended up saying that money can't buy happiness, never had any. I've been broke, and I've been financially okay, and I prefer being financially okay and everything. Rich is a state of mind, okay? Rich is not a dollar amount. Rich does not have anything to do with a dollar figure. Rich is, are you happy with your life? Are you happy with your surroundings? Are you happy with the fact of the people that you hang around with, the things that you have? the things that you can supply for your family, the things that you can supply for your friends, and basically, are you doing right by what would be morally and ethically thought of good by others? If you're doing that and you're comfortable with what you're doing, you are financially set. So, Tony, you wanna make an opening statement of any kind, or?
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Jeff Frank said you took up catfish noodling, and by the look of your left arm, you've got a big one, so I just wanna
Yes.
see how that catfish noodling is doing.
I ended up, well, the first thing is I'm country as they come, but I did not know what noodling was. As a matter of fact, the first time somebody said, "Hey man, I want to take you noodling," I started hearing banjos playing in the background. and I went, is that anything like camping? I said, explain noodling to me and everything. And then, so then they ended up saying that, and I went, oh, catfishing. They said, no, catfishing is where you end up trying to trick somebody. He said, this is where you reach up into the mud and grab a big ass catfish. And I'm not talking about a big catfish, it's a big ass catfish and everything. And so, it caught on because I have a picture, it's on the phone that's doing the camera, but I'm gonna show it to you. I ended up taking one of the grandkids fishing the other day, and he ended up catching a fish that was bigger than his brother. And he ended up chasing him around with it. So, took his boat to hold it up. Anyway, so that worked out well. So Tony?
Well, thank you, everyone. It's an honor to be here. Pete, thank you for inviting me. And I see some old friends, Ken and Dan. Good to see you guys. And, I was running a little bit late, and I was coming down the highway. And so I figured I better put the pedal to the metal to get here in time. So sure enough, the blue lights got behind me. As a matter of fact, 2 police cars. But they pulled me over, and they said, well, first of all, I acted like I didn't see them. I thought they were chasing someone else. So I just kept going. And when they finally, pulled me over, they said, listen, didn't you see us? We've been trying to pull you over for 5 miles. I said, I'm a forward-looking guy. I never look back. And they said, well, we've been given tickets all day and our shift is about over. If you could give us an excuse we've never heard before, we'll let you go. So I thought about it. I said, my wife ran off with a police officer a year ago, and I thought that was y'all trying to bring her back. And he said, have a nice day.
That's pretty good. I like that one.
But anyway, so yeah, I guess we're here for, Brain Pick a Pro or whatever. So if you guys have any questions or concerns or anything that you've been experiencing out there, we've probably been through it too, and we could probably help you overcome something. I just got back yesterday. I was in Columbia, South Carolina, and I was door knocking up there, and it was really good. We had some really great response from people that we knocked on the doors. But we also attended the auction, and the foreclosure auction is the most unique thing I've ever seen. It's in a courtroom and a judge does it. But what's unique is they make the investor give their phone number when they win the bid. They have to tell who they are, the name of their company, and give their phone number. So that's the greatest way to build a great buyer's list. And that's the only state I've ever been in that they have to tell their phone number in front of the whole crowd. So,
You got
and of
all
course,
of it, right?
pardon?
You got all those numbers.
Absolutely.
You gonna share with the group?
Well, I will, I really
Okay,
will.
all right, that's
But,
all.
but that is awesome, because I go to the auction, I went today, I go to the one in Cobb County, and that's where I meet investors to wholesale deals to, or to sell them in as-is condition. and this is my wife now. So,
Speaker.
anyway, yeah,
No way.
I gotta tell you, you know, I mean, my wife, she gives me a hard time a lot of times, just like Pete's, but you know, she is responsible for making me a millionaire, because
What were you before?
before I met her, I mean, when I first met her, I was a multi-millionaire. I was grocery shopping with my wife, and she goes down every aisle, takes forever. She reads every label for 20 minutes, and I get very bored. I can't stand going grocery shopping with her. But I get hungry, so I saw this can of peaches, and it had a pop top, so I went ahead and ate the peaches and put the can in the basket to pay for it. I had every intention of paying, but somehow it disappeared when we got to the front, and I actually got arrested, and I had to go to court. And when I got to court, the judge said, "How many peaches were in that can?" And I said, 5. He goes, "Well, I'm giving you 1 day in jail for every peach. So you have to serve 5 days." And my wife stood up and said, "Should I say something, Judge?" And he goes, "Yeah, what is it?" He stole a can of peas too.
Yeah, well, we got lucky with to be honest, you know, being in the business that we're in, we did very well, and it's probably a good thing that we married the ones that we did, because the ones that we traveled with and everything were, you know, the stories were a little different. So, you know, I mean, there's people in here that know my wife and everything, and have known her for years and everything. So, for those of you who don't know, I married a trophy wife. She just didn't win first place.
You said that on the cruise, that didn't go over very well with people in the audience. So women, you got booed on that one.
Yeah. Now she knows that I tell that joke, okay? Because when she used to come to these things, we've been doing them for so long that she retired long before we did. She used to stand in the back of the room and banter with me back and forth about jokes. And we would go back and forth and everything. And you know, finally, she ended up going, you know, I'll go anywhere in the world that you want to go, but I'm not going to. What was it? I was in some place in Ohio just the other day. She says, "I'm not going to Ohio." She says, I'm not going to, you know, Charlotte. I'm not going to Columbia and stuff like that. She goes, "You know, you need to take me someplace I ain't never been before." So I took her to the kitchen. Anyway, we'll get on. You get us started, but you know, I mean, it's, hi, how are you? Great. So anyway, one of the things that I wanted to end up putting out there for people to think about as we're looking for some questions to come about is Tony and I are going to be doing a 3-day boot camp together. Okay, there has been so many times and so many years that we end up going to places like National RIA and some of these other places that knew that we had done the boot camps for so many years, and that we had the awards for them and all that. And then we just got so busy, and we had kids at different times, and things, you know, just sort of separated us. And so, you know, this is the first time that we've actually ended up sharing the stage, besides being separate speakers at the same event and everything. This is actually the first time that we've been together, and we have been asked for years and years and years. People keep asking us, when are y'all gonna end up doing the Pete and Tony Young's training, the 3-day training? Because it was, I mean, they said that, you know, it was almost like it complemented each other so well, the finding, the fixing, and everything. he's gonna donate $20.
Yeah.
So anyway, we have decided that, we started meeting for lunch, together on a lot more basis and everything. And we have decided that we are gonna start doing, the Pete and Tony boot camp, or Tony and Pete boot camp, however you wanna end up putting it. And, we're gonna start putting those together, and we're gonna do one this year, and then we're gonna do one, probably twice a year, from then on out. So y'all will be listening for that. And who would be interested in coming to something like that?
I'll tell you.
I think so.
How many vans?
That depends. There was a time that we ended up doing, 3. Jeff, did we have 3 or 4, tour buses for the biggest investor bonanza that we did? Yeah, we had to split up into 3 different groups and everything, go to 3 different areas, because we ended up having it, and that was quite a big thing. But Tony and I have been wanting to schedule something together. It's just that, life happened, and my son is now 40, and his daughter is younger and everything, so she's 23, 24,
25.
25.
I gotta tell you a story about one of our bus trips. We pulled into a neighborhood, and there was these little kids with a lemonade stand. So we told the driver to pull over. We asked everybody on the bus to buy some lemonade. And those kids, they ended up with this big fat stack of cash, and they were standing there when we drove off going, who were those guys? But then we found out that Ron LeGrand had planted his kids there. That was just one of his money-making things.
Yeah, that was guerrilla marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
But you should see it when you drive a big bus past someone that's in foreclosure, and then goes down the street, and a few minutes later someone knocks on their door. They go, y'all wouldn't have to be on that big bus, would you? So it sort of messed up our deals. Oh, I gotta tell you, I wish I'd have brought a picture, but we went up to this one door, and there was a giant stack of cash just laying on the welcome mat. I mean, we didn't pick it up and count it, but it was thousands of dollars. And it terrified me so much, I said, look, we're not gonna knock on this. And we took off. And the students were saying, why can't we knock on it? We've made money and we haven't even talked to the owner yet, But I thought it was a drug dealer or something, and maybe some customer owed him some money and just went and left it there and got the hell out of there. But that was a scary situation. I don't know, what would y'all do if you saw a big fat stack of cash?
Well, that just goes to show you what the problem was. Is they always say don't end up doing your own product. Otherwise, I wouldn't have left the money on the front step.
But here's the thing.
Just leave them a receipt.
What? Yeah. Well, the reason I didn't want to knock is because if he would have picked it up and counted it and it was not all there, he would have blamed me, So that's one of the things that came to mind. But I tell you, door knocking and things like that nobody does it. Everybody's afraid of it. And that's why I still do it, so I don't mind if y'all are afraid, because I still, even yesterday, when I was talking to an owner, I said, how many letters have you got? He said, I got hundreds of thousands of letters. I've had agents, I've had investors, I've had TV people contact me. And I said, how many people have come to your door? He goes, you're the only one. And so that tells me, that's why I still do it. Now, I know we have a fear of getting shot and all that stuff. It's a crazy. But you know, the way I look at it is I figure who really wants to go to jail at that moment? And also, there's cameras everywhere. When you're at a front door, you are being filmed. So be careful what you say. Don't say, whoa, this guy's a scumbag. Look at all this garbage, you know, because it's recording you. And then not only that, but the neighbor's house is recording you too. So there's so many people with these Ring doorbells, or they got cameras up above your head. And but I figure if they do shoot me, then they're going to be captured on film, and I'm going to be the innocent one. I'll be dead, but they'll look at that film and they'll see that I was as nice as I could be to that person. And yesterday when I was talking to a guy, he kept me for 25 minutes, and you know I had to cut him off because he said, you know, he goes, what really made me feel good about you is you looked me dead in the eye. And he goes, most other people, they never do that anymore. So I've always felt eye contact is the key to my success, is you know, look them dead in the eye, because it builds trust. Even Bill can tell you, and Darlene, that when someone answers the door, they're standoffish. They don't trust you. And they have no idea who you are, but when you look them dead in the eye, then all of a sudden they seem to calm down. And plus, you always want to carry your cell phone right here, because, you know, I've heard many stories in church that people get shot, but their cell phone saved their life. And actually, I wore a bulletproof vest when I would take people door knocking, but then Pete started selling them to them. No, I'm just kidding. I've never wore a bulletproof vest. But you know, people are generally nice. They don't want to. Most people don't want to shoot you, but there is crazy people out there, and I don't knock on every door. I analyze the situation. I look at the car in the driveway. If it's a Toyota Tercel with a Christmas tree air freshener dangling from the mirror, I figure I can pretty much picture who drives that car, and that's who's going to answer the door. But if I see a four-wheel drive with rebel flag bumper stickers and rifle racks in the back window, I can picture what kind of guy drives that car, and I may not knock on that door. I'll say,
Oh, hell, I'd knock on his door.
yeah, you can, but I don't want no beach nut spit in my eye. It burns. And there was another story where I had some students with me, and there was a Gangsta-mobile. Does anybody not know what a Gangsta-mobile is?
Come on,
Yeah.
around backwards.
It's a quasi Cadillac. It's a quasi Cadillac. It looks kind of like a Cadillac, but it has these big giant rims, and the tires are only about this thick. And that was in the driveway, and I said, I'm not knocking on that door. And all my students were going, what a wimp. Well, you're such a wimp, man. I can't believe you're not knocking on that door. So I said, okay. And sure enough, that guy cussed us out up and down, you know, I mean, but he never opened the door. He just says, get the blankety blank, 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 blank out of my yard, or I'll shoot you. Or I'll bust a cap in your eye. And so we walked away, and I always have the group down the street, about 10 houses down, and we were walking down the street, and we looked back and we saw he came out and went out to the street to see where we went, but he saw me going back to that crowd, and I guess he felt outnumbered. Which brings me to another thing. When I go to a house that has a whole bunch of cars in the yard and the driveway, I feel outnumbered, so I may choose just to call those people. Because I remember one time I did go to a house that had many cars, and I remember when I asked the guy, I said, "Hey, would you guys be interested in selling this house?" He turned around and told everybody, he goes, "Hey, this guy's here at the door, he wants to buy our house," and you could hear them all going, "Tell him to go blow it himself." And, you know, so I've learned over the years what doors not to knock on, so you gotta have common sense. But when you're out there, and Darlene and Bill can verify this, when you go out door knocking, you find 100 more deals than doors you knock on, just by being out there. And that's why I'm gonna continue to do it. Those hedge funds and even at the auctions, they're paying way too much for houses. They're just paying way too much, and so it's the only way. The hidden market is the only way that I can find good, profitable deals, and I'm gonna continue to do it. Yeah, Dan? what's
Tony,
your-
if you find a house, a hidden market house that has a LLC in Arizona, will you pursue it if it's a vacant house?
Well, I'll call them, and I do, but what usually they tell me is they say, "We don't sell nothing, we only buy," so I just add them to my buyers list. But the majority of people like that usually tell, but you never know, there's a lot. I've even seen some investors getting foreclosed on these days. So I think that it's worth pursuing, because it might be one of those investors that need someone to buy it, and they understand our language.
One of the, I'm sorry, I did tell this story and then get to you. One of the things that Tony and I did on a bus trip one time, and it was one of the most profitable deals that we ever did, and it was one of the longest deals that we ever held, is we were out in, well, I'm not real sure exactly what the area was and everything, the street name and everything, but we were in the Kennesaw area, and we were driving down, and we did have a bus. We had probably 38 people on the bus at this particular time, and we had gone to about 8 or 10 houses, and had a couple of ifs, a couple of maybes, a couple that didn't have anybody answer the door. This one, Tony ended up taking a couple of people, and they knocked on the door, the people answered the door, and they could not communicate. They did not speak English. They were Spanish-speaking people. And so they could not understand what Tony was trying to say. And so, you know, they smiled at each other and tried to make it work and everything, and it didn't work and everything. And Tony came back onto the bus and everything, and we would always end up saying what happens at every single house and everything. So, Tony ended up saying, well, we tried to communicate, but they just couldn't understand what I was trying to say to them and everything. And so an idea came up, hey, does anybody on the bus speak Spanish? And so there was some people that said, we speak Spanish and everything. So Tony took them back to the door, and they knocked on the door, and they recognized, automatically just knew that it was Tony coming back and everything. I opened up the door, and Tony ended up would say what he wanted to say, and they would translate for him, and they would say something back. And it turned out that we ended up with that deal. We had that deal rented out for 17 or 18 years.
30 years. We actually kept that. I mean, that was.
Oh, that was the
making-
one that paid all the way off, right?
No, it wasn't paid off, but it seemed like it was almost 30 years.
Almost 30 years. Well, I mean, we had some, when we first started doing it, then we thought, if we ended up getting so many, and we held them until they got paid off, that's what we'd retire on. And then, the more and more we got into real estate, then we started fixing and flipping, because that was more money and everything, and it was big checks, and so that was intriguing and all that, and then flipping the deals was great. It was like, so there's really 3 ways that you end up creating wealth, and one of them is buying and holding so that you have something to retire with. As far as wholesaling, where you get them under contract to sell the contract to somebody else, that's pretty much weekly, bi-weekly, faster money and everything. It's less amount, but it's quicker money. But then there's also the fix and flip type stuff, to where it might take you 30, 60, 90 days, depending on the area that you're selling in. But you get a bigger chunk of money. It takes a little bit longer to do it and everything. But there's 3 ways to end up building wealth. And, if you take all 3 and combine the 3, then that works out really, really well. And, if you end up playing your cards right, then people will actually come to you with their house. And I'll give you the examples that I'm talking about. Everybody that knew our father and our mother, we grew up in that house as kids. And so everybody knew everybody. We learned how to swim in the neighbor's backyard swimming pool and everything that lived behind our dad. And we went to school with all the kids that were around there and stuff like that. So as we ended up getting more and more into the business, and I was more into rehabbing and doing some commercial stuff and some, I got lucky and got a couple of contracts with some other places and everything. And Tony continued into the real estate as well as working at Lockheed. But the more we started concentrating on the real estate part of it, then everybody knew that we did real estate. And so then when the people that lived behind our father passed away, they went into a home. And so the kids didn't want to manage the house. And they grew up with us, they were our age. They came and sought out Tony and said, "Tony, do y'all still buy houses?" And he goes, "Yeah, of course we do." And they said, "Well, let's see what you can do on our house." And it was the house that was right behind our dad's. And I literally, you might have learned how to swim before then, but I learned how to swim in that swimming pool by the lady teaching me when I was this big, and so they came to Tony and ended up saying, "If y'all still buy houses," and he says, "Yeah, me and my brother Pete, we're still buying houses," and we were buying houses a lot back then. So we got that one and got it at a really good price, and they didn't want all the money up front because they didn't want to pay taxes on it up front. So they basically allowed us to end up doing some creative work with it.
Well, what we did is we made the dual offer strategy. We said we'll give you 155 cash, or we'll give you 174 if you'll owner finance it. So they loved the owner financing and took that in a second. And so it was at 4% interest, and we had a good positive cash flow for all those years. So.
And then on the other side of our father's house, there was the next door neighbor, and they were failing in health, and they were in a rehab or retirement home that our father was in later on in life. And they were talking about, when we get ready to sell this house, our kids are gonna end up contacting you. But the house, just one beyond that, was all, it was looking all tore up and everything. And we knew Perry, the guy who had been living there, and we knew he was on his own, and he had been going through some problems and everything health-wise. So Tony went over there for months and months and months, knocking on the door, and finally ended up getting in touch with him. And it turns out that he passed, and then the sister ended up, was it the sister turned up?
No, well, what happened was a neighbor, the guy would never answer the door, and his house was just atrocious. It was terrible. And so I thought I'd help the community, the neighborhood, by buying that house and fixing it up. But here's how it happened. The neighbor, I went to the neighbor because the guy would never answer the door. And I said, "Do you know what's going on over there? That guy, he won't take care of the place, and I'd buy that house. I really want to buy it. Can you tell me anything about it?" she goes, he's got diabetes. I found him laying in the ditch next to his mailbox one day, and that's how I found out he had diabetes. And I go over there a couple of days a week and dress his wounds for him. And she said he was in such bad health. I asked him if he had a will, and he didn't have a will. And he said he won't write one because he said all of his brothers and sisters and relatives are dead. He said, I have no relatives, so I don't need to write a will. So, and then she tried to get him to sell the house and move into a condo or something with the money. And he says, I'm not selling. There's no way in hell I'll ever sell. So that's why I didn't respond to any of my calls or anything. But then one day that neighbor called me and said, you know what, I went over to dress his wounds and he was laying on the kitchen floor deceased. And she goes, I don't know what's gonna happen to the house now. So I just thought I'd let you know if you know how to do, you know, what they're gonna do with his house. So I went on IDI data, which is a skip trace, and I found his mother's sister in Greeley, Colorado, and she was 70 years old. And I talked her into becoming the personal representative. And she goes, well, I haven't seen him in 15 years. She goes, you know, she didn't even know he had died or anything. But I talked her into it. I hooked her up with a couple of local probate attorneys, and she filled out the paperwork and was able to do everything online. And so I kept the grass cut and everything. And she said she was bombarded once probate started with people wanting to buy it, people wanting to list it. But she said, because you helped me so much, and you took care of the yard, and you helped clean out all the garbage, and she even bought the dumpsters for me. But just because I went the extra mile, not even knowing if I was for sure gonna get the deal, she turned everybody else down and sold it to me. And then it turned out, because after she got approved, she got the $126,000 for the house that I offered her, and it turned out he had $100,000 cash in his bank account. He had 2 cars, and we sold them for the lady, and she walked away with about $250,000. But we fixed it up, and we made $218,000 net profit. And this was just after the pandemic, when lumber prices were high. But $218,000, that's pretty good for a single family home. But the point is, if you see a house, somebody's gonna buy it someday. So don't ever give up. Just keep pursuing that house. Even if you wait every 3 to 6 months, check back, because if you don't, you're gonna see a dumpster in the yard someday, because all houses will be sold to someone.
And one of the biggest things about the point to be made here is, and I know that there's several people in here that end up following this same the same perspective as the way that we look at it. If you see a problem that somebody has with a property, it's not a matter. It doesn't matter what the offer is as far as financial offer. It's, are you fixing the problem? If somebody has a problem or several problems, and you give them a way out of their problem, which is basically what the most successful people in this business do, is they don't actually look for an actual number. They end up saying, tell me what all your problems are, and let's see if we can fix these problems. And if after you fix these problems, you can still turn a profit and their problems are solved, they will sell to you before they will sell an overpriced property to a hedge fund, okay? Because a hedge fund could offer them $20,000 more. But if they still have problems, you know, then what's that $20,000 going to do? It'll probably get eaten up somewhere else with another problem. So if you can end up just making it a part of what you do to end up solving the problems.
And the way you know that is if you've got to keep your mouth shut. You see, when you're talking to a seller, your tendency is to keep talking and keep talking. But I found that the less I talk, the more they talk, and they will tell you how to buy their house. If you listen, they will tell you exactly how to buy their house, because they'll talk about all their problems, and they'll talk about where, I don't know where I'm gonna put all my stuff, I can't go to an apartment, I wanna move out of state or something. And so you just make the offer that solves all those things. And then they have no problem accepting your offer. And it's amazing how it works. And you know, it
Makes
took
it
me
easy for them.
huh?
It makes it easy for them.
It does, because if they sit there and complain about everything wrong and all their problems, and then all of a sudden you hand them a piece of paper that says, I'll take care of this, and then his problems are solved, they're going, gee, I couldn't sleep at night for the last month, and here, this guy gives me a piece of paper that's solving all my problems. And I show them how they'll be set up for at least 30 days, because I always offer to pay their first month's rent and catch up their utility bills. So they're set for 30 days, and then I say, and then you get a big fat check at the closing, your problems are over. You can go party. And another point I wanted to make about knocking on doors, in case y'all run home and start knocking. Picture this. Let's say that I'm at Quick Trip and I walk out the door and some big, bad, mean-looking, ugly Hells Angels biker comes pulling up on his Harley chopper, and he parks right in front of you. If you went up and said to him, I love your bike, would you be interested in selling it? It makes him feel good, and that's the same way I am when I knock on a door. I love your house, and that makes him feel good, and then I ask, would you be interested in selling it? And I've found over all the things I've said at the front door 1,000,000 times, that seems to be the best, because it really makes them feel good with those first words. And then if they don't want to sell, I mean, they'll tell you, but at least they'll talk to you. And instead of be wanting to slam the door. And so just remember that even the meanest, ugliest biker, if you said, I love your bike. Now, when they do ask me, they say, man, why do you love my house? It looks like crap. I say, I just love the style of it. And they think I'm talking about Cape Cod or Tudor or something, but really the style I like looks like crap.
Seeing as though he ended up using a biker thing for a story, this story just popped into my head and everything, and I gotta tell it. I was at a seminar, and I was speaking for Jimmy Reed's. He has a place in Dallas Fort Worth, a Rio club, and we were at the same hotel that there was a biker rally going on, and so the whole lobby was filled with bikers, and it, they had all their chains and the patches and Harleys everywhere, and doing wheelies in the parking lot and all this kind of stuff. And we're trying to do a real estate seminar in there. And, obviously y'all know that from even me being in here, making jokes and everything is just part of what I do to feel comfortable up here. And so, so I told a couple of jokes and everything, and they said, well, I bet you won't go out there and tell a joke in front of them damn bikers out there. And I said, comedy is something, now, I said, comedy is not something that offends people and everything if they know it's a joke. Well, you can't say that now, because now you can't say anything because you'll offend somebody. But anyway, so somebody ended up saying, I'll bet you $50 you can't go out there and tell a biker joke in front of them bikers and get away with it. And I said, I'll take that bet. So about half a dozen people followed me out during a break, and we were sitting out there, and I got in the middle of a bunch of them, and there was some people standing around me and everything, and I said, hey, somebody bet me $50 that I wouldn't come out here and tell a biker joke. And so they all got quiet down and everything, and they're all looking at me, and I'm like, oh, hell. What did I just do? And everything. And then I thought, well, you know what? I mean, go for it and everything. I said, what's the difference between a Hoover and a Harley? And everybody looked at each other and everything, and finally somebody goes, what? And I said, the location of the dirt bag. Took about what seemed to be 30 seconds, and then everybody started laughing, and I quickly just sort of scooted on out and everything. But it probably wasn't 3 seconds, but it seemed like forever before I heard that first laugh and everything. But that was a pretty good joke.
Why, nobody give you a vest?
He didn't tell you who got the $50. They did.
Yeah, I bought them all around the drinks. I said dirt bags for everybody. So, is there a question out there, or do we just want to end up talking about? Yeah, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. I do
almost
that.
did too.
I do that when I'm up here.
So mine's a piggyback on Dan's, so to remind us what Dan's question was, LLCs. Techniques, do you or anybody have good techniques to be able to get to that person? It's really tough, because a lot of the LLCs, you're gonna find the registered agent.
Or you may never find anybody.
In the Arizona groups, right, it's kind of difficult, impossible. What are some good techniques to get to somebody who is the one you wanna talk to at the LLC?
Well, of course, we've tried going to the Secretary of State and getting the registered agent, but I don't know if all of y'all have IDI, but I usually put the LLC in there, and sometimes that does give me somebody's phone number that I can call, and if it's not the right person, then they might give me a number, and
The Secretary of State will have the registered agent. So.
That's it,
Yeah.
registered agent, but sometimes they're just lawyers, they're not gonna give you.
And
That's
sometimes
right.
That happens, but I'm saying, that's the place to turn, or you've gotta go creative. So.
yeah, and I've always used courthouse records to try to find somebody somewhere. I just look at every document on that particular property and see if there's any name that I can scarf out of it that might be something that I could go to IDI and get their number.
What's IDI?
Well,
IDI.com?
it's IDIdata.com. It's a skip tracing thing that I just fell in love with, but it's free to register, but it cost $1.75 but it gives you name, email, every place they've ever lived, where they're living now, and it gives you all their relatives' names and phone numbers, and even their neighbors' names and phone numbers. It's amazing. And,
Better than been verified?
oh yeah, absolutely. It's the best. I've tried them all, but I've never had anything as good as IDI. And you can't sign up individually. You have to be an LLC or a corporation. I don't know why they won't let you sign up individually, but that's the rule.
And if there's an address or a post office box for the LLC then you can always send a letter or a postcard to the LLC, you know, stating whatever language that you wanna do and everything. I know that a lot of times, Tony is able to come up with an email, when people, a lot of people get stopped at gatekeeper type situations. And, you know, every time that I've run into a situation like that, Tony's got a thing that he does magically that ends up getting around gatekeepers. And I guess it's that IDI, you know, there was a time that there was some other website type,
Lane Guide.
places. Yeah,
Lane Guide
Lane
is what
Guide.
you're thinking about.
Yeah, Lane Guide was something that, if you ended up seeing somebody that was listed as a registered agent, then it would tell you who that agent works for. And you could sidestep the registered agent, and it would tell you, you know, who that registered agent is actually working for, and you could contact somebody through them.
Now, there was something that someone said, and I wanted to make a point. Oh yeah, there was a big article on the front page of the Atlanta Journal a couple of months ago. It was actually two weeks in a row, 2 Sundays in a row, of Atlanta was complaining about the hedge funds, saying that they don't take care of their properties and they don't take care of their tenants. And they said that even the code enforcement can't find the right person to talk to, because they really want to, but there's so many layers of protection that the code enforcement can't find the right person to find or to get them to take action. So Atlanta is kind of known for hating hedge funds. And there may be some in this room, but I'm just letting you know that I think it's the government that they just don't like them. And I've knocked on some doors outside of Cobb County, like in Fulton County, and some of the people I talk to, when they answer the door, they say, well, you know, so-and-so told us not to sell our houses to investors, you know, meaning a congressman or congressperson. So they're preaching to tell these Atlanta people not to sell to us investors. And so, you know, I love investors of all types, but you know, the hedge funds can sometimes make us look bad. And so anyway, I better shut up while I can.
Yes, sir.
I got a question. In the past, buying subject to was a big topic, and I guess it's been a couple of years, maybe 5, that I spoke with an attorney and he said that's not a viable option anymore. Is that?
No, you can still do it.
Okay.
You know, I only do it temporarily. So I think that's why, you know, that's the best way for me. But if you do it long-term, it can cause problems, in my opinion. Now, we might want to ask Darlene and Bill too.
That's Bill.
But myself, what I do is I'll take it over subject to until I finish rehabbing it, and then I might do a refi of some sort. Because one time I did get a call about a year later from a homeowner that was trying to get a new house, and they couldn't get a loan because they were still, it was still on their credit report. So just to make it easy for him, I tried to talk to the lender and show him the contract that he's not responsible for the payments, I am. But he said, well, we're not gonna give him the loan. So I went ahead and paid off that loan so that he could qualify. But Bill, do you have anything you wanna say about experiences that you've
Well,
been
when you
through?
close on a subject to deal, you're still using a HUD 1, and lines 203 and 503 on the HUD 1 still show property bought subject to. And I just set up a subject to deal, we closed on it this past Thursday.
Mhm.
So, and again, a lot of attorneys will not do subject to deals because of what happened in 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. They got burned. There was guru, from Macon, y'all know him. And he lost over 100 properties he bought subject to when he went through the divorce, and he just disappeared. And so a lot of attorneys got burned, meaning they had to spend time getting documents and they just don't wanna do it.
Right.
So in my case with my attorney, he will do subject to deals if you know what you're doing. That's a small group. But if you're, don't know what you're doing, he wouldn't touch you with a 10-foot pole, cause he wants to see longevity. But I've been doing subject to deals since '98, and we hold them. And we have them all paid off now, so we paid off all our subject to deals, paid them off early, though we didn't have to, it's just we had the funds.
Right.
And I've never had a problem, I've never had a subject to deal called, I've had 4 people go through bankruptcy, I just kept making the mortgage payments to the lender, never stopped, never heard anything, and eventually we paid the house off. And the subject to deal we just did was on the option, so we just, a lady didn't wanna move, so we bought an option on a property, and it's a 30-year option. And when we exercise the option, we're buying the property, subject to the mortgage. But just think, when you want financing, and think of all the people that refinanced from 2016 through 2022, you can pick up a 2.97% 30-year fixed rate mortgage, 4 or 5 years paid. Why would you not do a subject to deal?
Right.
I don't get that at all.
That's a good point.
And so attorneys are there to do the things you instruct them to do legally. You got the wrong guy, or wrong girl, whoever it is, they're giving you absolutely the wrong advice.
And Bill is correct, on the HUD one, it does have,
Subject to.
have it on there, 2 different places. So therefore it is legal. And what happens is the closing attorney calls the bank and says, what's the balance of the loan, to put in that line. So if the bank didn't stop them from doing it at that point, then it's really their own
Yeah, it's
fault.
just having the steps. And can we go
Yeah.
back to this, finding people, and Darlene, you already heard me say this before. The best way I've found people, whether it's an LLC or anything else, is we carry 2 or 3 for sale by owner signs in the back of our car. And so I put my phone number on it, and I stick it in the yard, and we leave. And I'll usually get a phone call within that day or 2 days. And usually whoever it is furious, because they wanna know
Yeah.
who you are trying to sell their house. I'm like, no, go look at the sign again. So the owner, I have a little bitty question mark, like this big. I said, I'm not saying for sale by owner, I'm asking for sale by owner because I wanted to talk to you.
For sale by owner question.
So that always, I thought, worked really well. And then a friend of mine named Kerry Milligan found an even better way. It's foolproof. And the way it happened was, he had stopped by a house like 4 or 5 times, cards in the door, I wanna buy your house, not in foreclosure, just, I really want the house. And no one would ever come to the door. He would go by the house regular, and his card was out of the door, so they were taking it in. And like on the 5th time he went to this house, he was backing up. And he accidentally ran over their mailbox. And Kerry Milligan's the nicest guy you ever met, he felt terrible. And he pulled back in, he's like, crap. And so he left a note on the door that said, I'm very sorry, I ran over your mailbox, my name is Kerry Milligan, here is my phone number, pick any mailbox you want from Home Depot, I'll put it up for you. Just, you pick, tell me what you want. And that night he got a phone call from the homeowner. So Kerry's telling me this. And I went, holy shit.
So now you run over mailboxes?
Yes! For $100, if you really like the house. So
That's right.
We had a big Dodge Dually 4x4 diesel, God-fearing, we call it Big Stinky. And I started just plowing over mailboxes, pulling the driveway going, I am really sorry, I ran over your mailbox and I'll pay for it.
That's
And
it.
stick it in the door.
Yeah.
Got call after call after call. When nothing else worked, run over their mailbox and then call the door.
Man,
Now that's a technique I've not heard before. Here's a new one.
It works. I mean, in nice subdivisions, their mailbox get hit just as often as in the poor neighborhood. Run over the mailbox, but offer to pay them to buy a new mailbox.
That's one thing that the post office won't do, is offer to replace the mailbox.
No, it's your mailbox. But those 2 things work really good.
That's
But
good.
we're going to absolutely the wrong people.
Yeah.
Does that work on
How many
vacant
free
houses too?
mailboxes did
I'm
you
sorry,
have to
what?
pay
Does
for?
that work on vacant houses too?
Make
Yeah.
it.
It's if you can't find the homeowner, so the easiest way to
Yeah,
find,
just run over the mailbox.
I got a website for you. You wanna find who owns the house and the history of it, what's happened to the house over the last 20 years? there's a free website out there that you can go to, and it'll tell you everything, you'll learn everything you want about that house, better than the thing you're using. It's called www.talktotheneighbors.com.
Yeah.
Okay. With subject to,
Is that .com or .net?
That's funny.
So,
no, with subject twos, there's something else a lot of people miss, and I've been done litigation in a number of states. More often than not, in most states, when the bank says, well, wait a minute, you're not the original, and you've got a proper contract that's been written properly, you can sue the bank because they now have two people responsible. And if you have made all the payments, the court throws them out because they have no sense of loss at all.
And I've not seen that, as far as I've not seen what you're talking about, because you're going
Depends
through
on
the deal
what
and
state
sale,
you're in.
no matter what, you're going through the deal and sale, cause if you transfer title or interest in the property, and you haven't notified the lender, cause I loan a lot, so I have that in my mortgages and my security bills, and if you transfer title to me, again, cause I'm private, I'm gonna see it real fast, and there is nothing you can do to stop me from foreclosing on you. Take me do whatever you wanna do, but if you took it sub two, I can take that property so fast to make your head spin.
Well, that's what you say, but I've done this in several states.
Okay,
How many states have you done it in?
a lot.
But have you
I
been
lived all over
challenged by
the
the
country.
lenders?
Yeah,
And you?
and I've taken, yeah. Because they have no loss. The payments have all been made, they've all been made on time. The other person is still on the note. They've had no issues, so they have no real reason to sue.
They do.
And it gets thrown out of court.
You violated the dual and sale clause, which is in the security of the mortgage.
Well, they can call, right? They can't sue you, they'll call the loan,
Yeah, they call the loan due.
Yeah.
And then if you don't
then if you default.
pay it, if it's not paid off, then they have the right to foreclose, because that's, in the end, the property is the collateral for the promise.
but there's always time to pay it off or get a,
90
Yeah.
days.
Yeah.
You know, because
Yeah.
let's say Georgia, non-judicial foreclosure advertised 4
Yeah.
consecutive weeks. But before that, you get a first letter, and then 30 days later, you get that letter that says I'm foreclosing. So first it has to be in default, that needs to be, right? So I'd say
So-
at least 90 days.
yeah, so it gives you time to do things if you have to. But I've always found, one time I told a bank, he called and said, you know, are you aware that we could call that loan due? We just wanna know, what are you doing? And I just told him everything. I said, hey, the house wouldn't qualify for a loan, so I caught up the payments, I'm making the payments on time till I finish rehabbing. And then, once I rehab it, I'm gonna refinance and pay you off. So he said, oh, well, that's great.
We're good.
Yeah, so I just find that if you tell them your intentions, well, first of all, you don't be scared that someone's gonna call you, but, you know, once out of 200 times, someone did call. And I just told them what my intentions were. And they just wanna know that you're not trying to screw them over, you know? So you just tell them the truth.
One of the things that I wanted to end up talking about here, was there's a house in my neighborhood that somebody's trying to sell, and they're having a hard time getting people to buy it. And the thing is it's a reasonably pricey house, but the thing is, it's got a 2.3% loan on it. And anybody that ends up buying the house, cause the loan's not assumable, then they're gonna end up getting bumped way up. So, my wife wanted the house because she thinks it's gorgeous. And we're friends with the people, so we said, would you consider owner financing so that we could keep your interest rate? And they're moving back to Atlanta because he got transferred back to Atlanta, and he says, no, I actually need, you know, the money and everything so that I can end up paying off, you know, the other house, that's gonna be out here. And I've been racking my brain and everything, trying to figure out, how it could be ended up structured, because, you know, the bank will not give an assumption package because they know that if they gotta refinance the house, they're not gonna refinance it for that low of an interest rate.
It's anymore.
You know, if you get a new loan, they're not gonna give you that kind of interest rate. I don't wanna end up paying cash for the house because that will end up, taking any ready cash that we have to put out for investments and stuff like that. Or if we wanted to put up anything into a high dollar, you know, like if somebody said, you know, we need X amount of dollars and you can be a part of a 250 unit apartment complex, but everybody's gotta put in X amount of dollars and everything. I don't wanna be tied up
How
in,
much is their equity in the property?
I would have to say that they've got 350, 400 in it. It's a
They need all of that?
It's $1.3 million, is what they're
They
asking.
need all the equity out, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Well, what I would do is sell your house to, and then you have the money to buy that one.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I could sell I could actually sell the house to my son James, but the thing is that he's like, well, yeah, I could buy the house, but he said, I get the golf membership because you live there, so I don't need to buy a house in there because if I own the house, then it costs me $60,000 a year for the golf membership or something. But, you know, I mean, I could sell the house, but I like the house that I have because of the location of it. This one's on the golf course, and mine's more towards the lake. But the one on the golf course it's more bedrooms, and I like mine because it's all flat, and I don't have to climb up steps and everything.
It doesn't have master on main in the other one?
There is a master, that's why I would consider doing that.
okay.
The only thing is that, I like the one, and I would like to keep both houses, especially the way that they're rising in there. But I don't wanna buy a house at 8 or 10% interest, knowing that they've got it for 2.3. And, you know,
Maybe Tom's got an idea.
go ahead.
Consider this with the seller. They do seller financing. You put down whatever you wanna put down, that's money in their pocket. Then you make 2 or 3 payments to them to season it, and then have them sell it to me in the secondary market.
Sell the
For
loan.
a string of payments that gives them the cash they need to go on to the next place. And if I buy a partial, then once that is done, the stream of payments reverts back to them. So it's not like they're getting a real haircut.
Right. Okay.
And you get the house.
Introducing Cash Flow Tom.
Yes.
For those who don't know him.
Hey, Tom.
Yeah, there's
You wanna
cash flow, Tom.
Create notes, Tom buys notes.
Yeah, I also, will work with investors to analyze the deal as to whether or not seller financing is a viable vehicle to go into a deal to buy it.
Right.
As well as exiting the deal with seller financing. Sometimes it works on one side, but not on the other, depends on your strategy.
So, can somebody, can they, let's say that my son's last name is different than mine, okay? Cause, when I married my wife, he was from a previous marriage and everything.
No money down, take over payment.
Yes, I got my wife and son with no money down, just take over payments.
You should have gone for a lease
And they
purchase.
were both fixer-uppers. But, you know, so the deal is, you know, I'm not a stepdad, I'm actually a dad that stepped up. So,
Good for you.
you know, and so, and he will tell you that I'm his dad, so, you know, that's not the problem. But see, if I bought the note, could I buy it at 2.3%?
From whom?
No.
From the owner?
Subject
You're
to,
not buying
it's a
it.
subject to deal.
It would be subject to.
You're wrapping the subject
Right,
to.
okay.
You could call the lender and see about shorting the note,
Yeah,
because they might be willing to let it go since the interest rate's so low. Because then they can take that money and go back and now get to 6 to 8%.
Yeah,
Do the people know where they're moving? Do they have a house picked out or an area picked out?
they've already bought the house.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, they've already bought it?
Well, I mean, it's under
Under
contract.
contract.
It's under
So they already
contract.
qualified for the mortgage without selling their house first?
And they're waiting for this
It's
funds.
part of the
Contingent.
closing is
Contingent.
contingent on the sale of the
It's
house.
an option.
It's contingent on the sale of the house.
Mm.
And so.
And there's no way they're gonna get a mortgage without selling their house first?
They could, but they don't really want to, because they know what they've got, and the thing about that property is that the houses in the neighborhood, they doubled, if not almost tripled, in the last 3 years. So everybody that's trying to move is trying to take advantage of the situation while it's at that high dollar.
Yeah.
And so they really don't wanna sell to friends, because
They're gonna hose 'em.
they know that we bought 3 years ago too, and ours tripled. And so we know that theirs did, and so they want to get as much physically out of it as they can, because if they ever get the chance, they wanna move back.
How much did they pay for the house? What's the 121 situation?
They probably paid 700,
And they're selling for, so they're within the 500,000?
1.3,
Yeah, so they're pretty much covered, so they get 500,000 tax-free.
yeah.
Which is the best way for them to go. What if, when you sold, if you were able to do the deal, if you rented your house out, could you do like matching payments on where they're moving into? If you were covering those payments via renting out your old house?
It's possible, but then the only way that we could end up doing that is to actually end up acting as if we were, or renting the house to our son, because we don't wanna give up that house.
But I'm saying you keep your house, but you rent it out.
Just rent it.
Yeah,
But here's the thing, so you're approaching the deal from your point of view.
right.
Now approaching the deal from their point of view. What's the best thing for them? Sell the house for cash and do the 121.
Yeah, well,
Top of the market.
they would love to end up just getting cash for the house.
So when you take it, that's what Tony was talking about before, is they'll tell you how to structure it. You may not like how they tell you to structure it,
Right,
but they're telling you what they want, how to structure it. And, Pete has a great saying, there's no such thing as an impossible deal, but there is such a thing as impossible people.
I live in them every day.
yeah, yeah, that's
But
true.
I'm in Tony's court on this one, like, just tell me what you want. My job is to help you solve the problem. And it can't be about me first, it's gotta be about them first.
Well, what I want
But then
is,
again, you got your wife.
I want two sausage, egg and cheese McMuffins and Pete to buy the house.
What? Is it cash flow, Tom? Is that what
Yeah.
they call you?
Yeah.
Okay, I've heard about you, just hadn't really
Tom
put it
Boyer,
to
Tony
effect.
Youngs.
But anyway, I love your idea, just, create a mortgage and sell the loan. Tell him to sell that, that's one good option too, so. Because that gives them the cash they want,
Right.
so, but it helps you to get the deal too.
Well,
And whoever buys the note, if they can get a yield, 10, 12%, whatever it is that investor wants,
Yeah.
you got great collateral.
and see, I was, after July 4th, when Tony has his family over, I was gonna try and drag Tony over to end up playing golf and go out on the boat for a couple of days.
Get him
And,
drunk.
and while he was there, I was gonna end up pulling up on the golf cart and go, by the way, you see this house right here?
Let's buy it.
I want you to tell me how we can buy this house and everything, but, now the story's blown. And everything.
Now,
So-
we're all gonna be over there trying to buy this.
Yeah.
Do they need the money now,
That's-
or is this something that they want for retirement, or do they wanna pay off the new house they're buying, or what do they wanna do with that money?
You know, I think that they don't want to be in a bunch of debt because the money is not their problem.
Okay.
He's pretty well off.
Okay,
You know, he's the kind of person that he could probably end up not even worrying about selling the house right off the bat, but I think his wife doesn't like the idea of him having something like that hanging over. She's going, you know, that's $1.3 million, just sitting over someplace, and what, you wanna go visit it on weekends or something like that? And he's thinking, well, you know, I'd like to come back here. As a matter of fact, he's heartbroken that he has to move because he's a
What about,
he's a
what
golfer.
about partnering on the deal and using it as a rental until he decides that he wants to come back?
Cause his wife is the only partner that she wants in the deal.
Well, have Barb talk to his wife.
Yeah, well, you know, Barb has a tendency to take over and everything.
Well, then you get the house.
See, anybody that's ever partnered with Barbara got the short end of the stick.
What if he's?
No, but I actually heard you had the short stick before you got Barb.
I think that's it. That must be it, you know, probably it. But,
What if he sold you the house? Cause he said he wants the house back, right?
no, he would like to move back. He doesn't necessarily have to
That
have
house, he
that
just wants to come
house.
back to the
So I was about to
neighborhood.
Because it's like this, okay, he's a golfer, so he doesn't mind being on the golf course, where I don't play golf, my son does, because of my
And your
knees.
brother.
And everything. I used to love to play golf with Tony all the time and everything before my knees went to crap. And so now I ride around in the golf cart and watch them play.
Fishing cart.
And everything. Do what?
Your
Yeah,
fishing
yeah,
cart.
my
You don't have a
fishing
golf
cart.
cart, you
I
have a
told
fishing
him,
cart.
I told him that
truck.
my golf cart has the fishing poles hanging off the back.
And I used to try to play golf with Tony, but he was always leaving every frickin' Sunday morning at 2 to 5 o'clock.
Yeah, so the big thing is, it's one thing that my wife wants the house, because it's a gorgeous house and everything, but it's on the golf course. If I'm going to end up buying a forever home, I want it to be a bigger house on the water with.
Okay, so let's say they're sitting in a forever home, what if your wife's gonna live there for a while, what if you got it with owner financing, or did a wrap or something, they gave him an option to buy it back? But again, then he's gotta want that house, and he may not.
Right.
He just wants to be in that area, that makes it
Right.
harder.
Yeah.
But we've done a number of times where we've sold a house,
Right,
and then I had the option to buy it back somewhere down the line, cause I like the house, so. I have a bunch of notes that.
P.D.
that I-
Fortunato does that. That's
Yeah.
what his big is.
I think that one of the biggest things is that the place was so popular, and they only allow a certain number of houses to be built per year so that the values are controlled. And so, they've got waterfront properties, and he is a golfer, but he loves the water too. So his next house will be on the water. So that's why if he got
Could be
the
a
full
swamp.
amount of this, then chances are, if he had the cash ready and something came available that was on the water, then he could buy it
Yeah.
cash and have this as something that he had a mortgage on to end up offsetting some tax or some capital gain.
He goes back to his point of view, it's best to sell it for cash.
Right.
Yeah.
And do what he wants to do with cash.
And, you know, he hasn't come right out and said it, but I can see that that's what he's leaning
He's
against.
saying it to you, and you already know that, you've done this
I know
1,000 times.
that because that's the way I would do it.
Yeah.
And, it's,
Tony, buy the house.
Yeah, I should, but I've got a sister and a brother with a lake house, so why do I need it?
it's just like,
Point.
it's just like James. Why would I buy a house in there just so I could have the golf membership? I got your golf membership when you bought the house. And the other thing is that all I gotta do is drop my kids off, on the way to the golf course and everything, and then I can leave them for 3 weeks, come back and play golf, and they don't even know that I'm there.
Now, do you remember he said the guy loves the golf course and he loves water? Most of us golfers, we hate the water because it swallows my ball every time, you know?
Yep.
If, wherever that water is, my ball finds it.
Yeah.
Not my issue.
Yep, there's a sandy beach on every golf course, right?
Be in the desert, you find the water.
Hmm.
So other questions? Any other questions? Do you have a comment?
Well, I wanted to say something about a guy that we ran across yesterday. He is being foreclosed on, and he wants to sell, but he has a major tax lien. He has a federal tax lien. So what I told him, he says, if you can figure out any way to buy it, then what? Go ahead.
Once you,
You go buy the tax lien.
The federal tax lien?
Yes.
Well,
You can buy a tax lien. I've done it a couple times. I bought them for anywhere from 10 to 15%. And they filed, it's closed. Now, let's say it's $100,000 and I gave them 15 grand.
Yeah.
I now own the $100,000 federal lien,
yeah,
which means now I go back into the guy. I've already made 85 grand. He does whatever I wanna do on the house. And the first time I did this was on the guy that, had a tax lien because of a business, couldn't get approved for a mortgage here. And I went and bought a $13,000 lien for $1,500. And we filed his lien as closed and I made $2,000.
wow. Now, here's what I was thinking is, because if his house goes to foreclosure and then it starts the 120-day rule, and the IRS has 120 days to seize the property, but they usually don't. So I was thinking, I'm gonna call the IRS and say, listen, is there any way you would go ahead and start the 120-day rule if I buy it directly from him? Because, you know, has anybody ever had any experience about that?
can you reach somebody at the IRS?
Well, you know, on the lien itself, it has the lien unit phone number, but I've never tried to call them because I've never wanted to talk to the IRS. But,
I called the IRS
How big's the
about a
lien?
lien and everything, and I said, yeah, I'd like to ask you a question about a lien on a property that I'd like to buy, and they said, okay, who are we talking to? And I said, Joe Thompson.
Well, that's okay. We're shitload in the country. Look at us.
You know, I was gonna go with Bill Smith and everything. No, I just, I have never thought about trying to buy a federal tax lien.
Oh, my tax attorney is the one that put me onto that. Well, I told him what the guy was doing. He goes, go buy the lien. I go, what?
How much is it looking?
And I went down to the office.
oh yeah, the lien is 181,000.
Okay. You can do that for 18,000?
Or 20, 30,000.
Because if you buy it from the courthouse, you have to pay off the lien right there at the courthouse.
He's got like 100,000 equity in his house, but this tax lien has really got him bummed.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, he was bombarded by every investor, and some of them actually made offers and everything, but
Yeah,
when
but
they
he's gotta
found
come
out,
up with 180 over what the note is just to pay off the lien.
yeah, his note's like
He's-
80,000,
Yeah, he's,
and he it's worth about 200.
yeah, he should have a luck.
Yeah.
Whoa, 200 and it's got 180.
Yeah. But, you know, I think, I've always known the IRS will still keep the lien on the person, but sometimes they'll detach it, so I guess it's worth asking, but then I don't want them looking around, you know. I think that he answered my question, I'll just say, I'm Joe Thompson.
You can always get a lawyer to make a call for you.
Like I said, just have your attorney call.
That's right, yeah, good idea.
That way the lawyer's confidentiality agreement with you,
Yeah.
you're being simple telling the IRS who's.
And add that to your problem.
I've got an attorney that does dirty titles and everything else.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'll give you his number.
all right, well, thank you.
I got a friend
And
named
now
Jeff
if this-
Watson that says, don't you
It
ever
wouldn't
call
matter
the
if it's in
IRS.
Carolina. South Carolina is where the
You know
property
Jeff, right?
is.
Yeah.
Was that, is
Oh,
your?
no, it's a federal lien, so
Oh,
it's-
is your
Yeah,
attorney?
It's a
Because
federal-
It's a federal
Oh,
He's only.
GOWs
yeah, he's here
and all that,
In,
yeah.
Florida.
Oh, he's Florida?
Well, he's here, but he's licensed here in Florida.
Okay,
You can still probably call the IRS and at least just ask.
yeah, probably,
I don't know that, I mean, he can tell you that or
yeah.
yes.
So you might as well ask both questions. Will they start the 120 and will they
Yeah.
sell it short?
Yeah,
Find out what the short price would be.
I'd be happy,
How old is
I
it?
don't even really wanna short it if they'll just detach it and do the 120.
Charlie, you've seen a ton of these things, you've seen a
Yeah,
bunch
but
of properties.
never, but they're always at,
But I know that as far as when you buy them at auction, do you ever buy them, or does having a tax lien against it stop you from buying?
no, like you said, the 120 falls off, so.
And have you ever seen, I've never
We
seen
don't
them
transfer
exercise
in
it.
the 120.
I haven't either.
I've
In
never
all
seen
these
them
years.
exercise it, they just,
Never
after
seen them,
100,
never,
you gotta
never,
wait
never.
120 days, which
Never
sucks.
seen them exercise it.
Yeah.
And you know, I bought one IRS seized house, and the only time that ever happens is when there is a ton of equity. I didn't know do it otherwise.
But between all of us, we've done a ton of deals and none of us have seen the IRS
No.
Exercise.
exercise, so.
But the problem is, cause I've had that question before too, at the, you know, there's the law that once it goes, so once it forecloses, it, you know, it
The clock
detaches after
starts.
120. But once it sells, does it fall off after 120?
Wait, say that again?
In other words, like the question you're asking, if you buy the property, does the 120,
No, you're
No,
buying
because
it,
you won't
you're
get-
buying it subject to, cause you're in junior position, you're buying it subject to the tax lien. That's why nobody wants to buy it,
right,
and they wait for the
Yes, they
auction
have to
and the
pay.
120.
yeah, so I've
120
never
days.
seen it on the pre-foreclosure.
And plus, that 120 doesn't even start unless the lender has proof of notification.
Yeah,
Too, so,
Right.
so that's why,
does the 120 start with proof of, when they're notified or at the auction, I think it's the auction date, isn't it?
no, it's, I've always noticed it was, when, at the proof of
auction date.
notification.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is
Should be
usually less-
notified.
30 days
So,
ahead of time. Yeah.
investors have bought houses where they only had to wait another 90 days,
Yeah.
till that
Yeah,
lien
because
dropped.
that gives the IRS the opportunity to take it, you know, put the document out that it's not gonna be on the property, it's just gonna transfer to the owner, the guy
Yeah.
who puts the money.
Now,
And
I,
anything else he buys.
I think we should let everybody know what we're talking about. I bet there's some people that don't even know, but go ahead with your
I'm gonna ask
question.
that question, because my understanding was, if you bought a house at the courthouse that had an IRS lien, you, as the buyer of that house at the courthouse, has to pay off that lien.
No,
No.
And you're saying something totally different, so would you please bring it down to, as my dear friend Ken Jordan says, bring it down to dig back for me?
Okay, now, I think I'll stand up so that I can see everybody.
There you go.
But what we're talking about is, if Joe was in foreclosure and they were gonna auction his house off next Tuesday, if he has an IRS lien on against his property or against him, which affects his property, the bank has to notify the IRS they're gonna auction this house off. And then the IRS says, okay, we've been notified, we acknowledge. And then they can auction the house off, and that starts a 120-day rule that the IRS can seize that property, even if Darlene bought it at the auction. She can't do any repairs, because if the IRS does seize it from her, they'll pay her back what she paid for it, but if she's done any repairs, they won't pay her for that.
Just the purchase.
But if the IRS does seize it, they'll pay you back what you paid for the property. So, but they won't, the 120-day rule is not even valid unless the auctioneer has proof of notification. So you would never buy one at the auction unless the foreclosing attorney can give you
Show you
the proof of notification. Because if you buy a house, like you were saying, if you buy a house and there's no proof of notification, or the IRS hadn't been notified, then you're stuck with that lien.
Yep.
So it can affect the person buying the house at auction.
No, it can affect you when you go to sell the property. It's not your responsibility.
It's a lien on the property.
It's a lien on the property itself.
Right, but I mean, I to stop.
It's equity in the property.
Yeah, so if, let's say you held that property for 15 years as a rental, that lien would sit there more than, you know, you may or may not be contacted by the IRS at that point in time, because they could always come and foreclose from that lien and take the property.
Would interest still occur?
No,
accrue,
well, it could.
Or would it be?
It depends on what the lien has interest.
Yeah, the interest would keep
So
piling
it
up.
would.
Yeah.
You could totally hurt yourself.
Yeah, you could buy an island for what you'd end up owing.
That's why when you see
That's
new
what the government
investors
is doing.
buy a property or bid on a property, when they bid on the property, on the courthouse steps, and all the gray hair bald heads are like backing away, when that thing starts and you watch that new person bid, and you're like, they don't wanna catch that stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm sure, so good.
well, you can't bid it over, outbid it over rock.
Yeah.
Oh.
What liens are not, so federal tax liens stay with the house, what, I know everything drops off at the foreclosure steps, what does not?
Government liens,
Any-
like state tax liens, property tax
city.
liens,
City.
Any governmental
HOA,
agency.
HOA liens stay,
Yeah.
don't they?
Do you know now, the HUD seconds stay?
Really?
If the first foreclosed all these years, the second fell off, it doesn't fall off. And I think it's
What?
going forward.
When did that
Yeah,
happen?
where's the
They're
cross section on that
starting
one?
to get big time into that now.
I just know
I
the
will
reality
look,
is.
I have, usually anything junior.
Government.
That's
Really?
right, I'm telling you, I guarantee you, it's pandemic, forbearance, moratorium related.
Oh, gee.
Heard that.
Cause it used to be everything that wasn't governmental
You
went
find the
away.
cross section on that sentence, because I
Yeah,
would
but
love to
then
read
you
that.
had-
Yeah.
I've never heard that one.
Damn.
You know, so back in 07 and 08, collapse,
Oh,
right,
that
we had
is
a
government.
crazy collapse. And then in 2010, we had the most number of banks close their doors, 10,
Yeah.
11, and 12. So now, we have all these moratoriums that prevented the bank from foreclosing. And,
Yeah.
and banks gave a lot of, I call them silent seconds. I know that's not the real term, silent second, meaning there's no monthly payment. But if you qualified for the forbearance during the last 5 years, they take your unpaid amounts, throw them to the side, and when you refinance your house, sell your house, pay off your first, the second gets paid off. And under, like you said, under normal rules, so the banks would lose out on all of that. And I'm sure that somehow that's connected with this new seconds don't fall off, the HUD seconds, the FHAs. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
It's the only one I know.
Well,
So
I'm
if-
coming back up to start working foreclosures in Bartow. And like I said, we just worked one, and I'm just real curious to see what happens.
Well, if anybody finds out anything on that as far as an article or something, if you'll email it, if you'll forward it to me by email. Cause not only would I end up sharing it with the group, but, I might end up having to share that with the national organizations that I'm with, because,
Then we gotta get together and figure out how to beat it.
cause you know,
Damn.
that's news to some people.
News to me.
Yeah.
I've never heard it.
And so, that would affect a lot of people that I know, especially from here on out.
Can you imagine, you know, you buy the first and the second sticks?
Yeah,
Oh,
That's
God.
a
Because-
horse color.
because, you know, it used to be that the worst thing that you could ever do is buy the second mortgage at auction and then find out that there's a first.
Yeah.
You know, now it seems like you bought the first and then find out that there's a second. You know, so there's some consequence there. It used to be to where you didn't really care about the second and everything, because you could normally end up, I've seen Tony negotiate down, junior liens, to basically either for free or
$10.
literally pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
There's been properties that we've done together that had no equity, and by the time Tony ended up knocking off, all the junior liens, it was $30,000 in the property that everybody else was shying away from, but you could negotiate the liens down to nothing. Or you know, create a profit where there was not a profit. And, so that right there to me is something that would be very beneficial for people to know. So, well, so besides any other questions that might be coming up and everything after this has been said, just a little talk between me and Tony tonight and everything, has this been, you know, fun for everybody? How many of you, are as excited as Tony and I about, putting together a Pete and Tony?
When is it?
You know when and where?
We're looking towards probably September. Does that sound right?
In Atlanta or?
It would be in,
Yeah.
it would be in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It won't be in Cobb County.
Well, it would be better for y'all, really, if it's not in Cobb County, really, because the prices are so high now.
Yeah.
It is really hard, so I'm even moving out to different areas, to get better deals, because everything's so expensive around our 5-mile radius, and it's not easy to wholesale, not easy to get a good positive cash flow, it's,
Coffee is $90 a gallon.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I will mention,
Exactly.
it's a wonderful gig. I did that with y'all, I can't even remember how many years ago, with the van where we were just north of the perimeter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was one of the better training ever. It really was.
And
cool.
nothing takes the place, because I think Darlene does something like this too, but there's nothing that takes the place of going out with someone who knows how, forget about the door knocking, you're talking to sellers, you're talking to homeowners. To see it live in action is so much better than watching something on YouTube or reading a book.
Right.
That's right.
And there's not a lot I know I don't do it anymore. So
Yeah.
there's not a lot of people who can have the experience and take people out and say, this is what it's like, and let's go see what's going on, and realizing how good it is, how kind people really are.
Mhm.
Right.
So
And-
that, just that, I don't know if you are gonna do any door knocking, but if you do,
Yeah.
just that is worth the price of admission.
Yeah.
Speaking of door knocking, I have to share this tip, because we're all about sharing good ideas. right?
Absolutely.
So this is like just observing Bill door knocking.
Oh, no, it's not.
No, this is great. And, you know, it was like, this was this aha moment.
Before or after you went over the
One of the biggest problems we have in real estate, trying to buy direct from seller, is sales, of course. Pick up the phone and call somebody you don't know. Knock on the door and
Talk
it's,
somebody, don't know.
so let me tell you what happens when it's time to make phone calls, and let's say it's 9 AM, what's the first thing we say?
I need coffee.
Good morning. Huh? No, I have to pick up the phone, but I'm like, I'm gonna pick up the phone, why won't I pick up the phone at 9 AM? It's too early. How about 6 PM? You're eating dinner, 9 PM. What I learned just being out on door knocking together was, Bill makes excuses to knock on the door. We find excuses not to do what we need to do to be successful. I mean, it was like that aha moment, like, wow, just make an excuse. They're selling Girl Scout cookies. They knocked on the door. I kid you not, that was the reason, and it's creating something out of nothing. But
All
yeah.
I remember is you made me take a group out and it was 27 damn degrees outside. That's what I remember you did.
27 degrees.
27 degrees,
It didn't even
and
dawn on
I
me.
froze my butt off.
We do this 24/7, right? It didn't even dawn on me that it was gonna be too cold, you know?
Yeah, like when you were knee deep in the snow.
Right, I've been in Chicago where
Oh, yeah.
my soaking wet pants and shoes and feet, we had to stop and buy some boots because the snow was so bad in Chicago. And there was something up there, they say, Tony, how do you inspect a roof if there's snow on it? I said, move to Georgia.
Yep, there you go.
Well, you know,
The answer's really from the inside.
Yeah. Something else to be said about, going on, and watching people doing door knocking and stuff. You know, I got lucky enough to be able to do it for years and years and years. Especially, you know, growing up and everything, and then I would follow behind and do the rehab estimates and stuff like that, but, you know, there's a lot of things that you pick up that you wouldn't even think has anything to do with it. One of the first things that you do, as far as, from watching you and everything, when you knock on the door, as soon as you knock on the door and everything, the first thing you do is take 3 steps backwards. You know, and people would look at you and go, what are you stepping backwards for? Or you want me to step forward? And then you go, no. you give the people space, you know, when they open the door, they don't want you right in their face
Right in their face.
and everything. The closer you are, the more threatening you are. The further away that you are from somebody, then the less threatening you are from somebody. And this is stuff that you end up seeing from.
Yeah,
That's
don't
an
wear a
excellent
suit.
point, Pete, and that actually came up, and not anywhere in this room, but when I worked with a roofing repair company.
Yeah.
Yes, they did do that thing that I hate, which is after a storm, go around and knock door to door. However, they train their technicians to stand at a 45-degree angle. Not only walk back 3 steps, but to stand at a 45-degree angle. Why?
Look at the roof.
Line of sight, so that the person answering the door can see clearly to the street. They're not looking right straight on the person. So they would
Right.
not only back up 3 paces, but angle their body.
Well, you're not squaring your shoulders out.
Exactly, exactly.
You square your shoulders to somebody, that's a
That's
fighting
threatening.
It's
position.
confrontational.
Yeah, so, you know, there's all kinds of stuff like that, that,
You need
you
such a
know.
volunteer bill.
This gentleman,
Did y'all learn?
Hey,
No.
We're all learning.
I've been actually doing some door knocking for a friend of mine who's running for office in Cobb County. But, and the group, when we were talking about it, they said, go in twos because it's less threatening than one person. Is there any thoughts about that? You know, cause I've mainly done door knocking on my own versus having somebody with you. Any thoughts on that?
You know, honestly, I just don't know. I don't know. I've never studied into it, so I don't know the answer.
But
I can tell you-
basically,
I can tell you as a female that answers the door, your first thought is, there are 2 of you and 1 of me, right?
The first thought is what?
Two of
There's
you, 1 of
2
me.
of them and 1 of me,
Oh, yeah.
right? But then again, after you start speaking with them, if one doesn't know the answer, the other one does. It's not, oh, I gotta go check, I'll get that answer to you. No, the second one knows the answer. So initially, it's like, ooh, okay, and then as you get into it, it's a little more comforting.
well,
So,
also couples is less confrontational, as opposed to 2 males, or, you know, in my case, 2 females, and everything. Because I can't win an argument against 1 female. If I gotta negotiate with 2,
Toast.
I'm lost.
Well, you know, early on, years and years ago, we would knock on a door, and if it was some scared little old lady and she was scared of us, then we would tell our wives to go the next day, because we knew that person needed help. And so our wives would go and knock on the door, and they'd be in there for 4 hours. And then when they come out, we'd say, well, did we get the deal? They say, what do you mean we?
What deal?
They said, we're keeping this one, you know, so.
Oh, that's funny. 4 hours.
You know, one more little door knocking story is we knocked on doors during Christmas season, and it gets dark really early, and I hate knocking on doors at night, but we still had 1 or 2 more doors on the list. And so I made the group, I said, I taught them how to sing Christmas carols. So that's how, when you sing Christmas carols, the people in foreclosure come to the door smiling, and they go, honey, get the kids. But they didn't realize that we had changed the words. And here's the song we would sing. It would go,
Oh, God.
foreclosure, exposure, keep in peace, all I want is for you to trust me. We don't want you to file bankruptcy. Let us make you a deal. Let us make you a deal. And then the guns would start shooting.
Sorry, folks, that's the only song they know. All right, does anybody have any other questions? Yes, sir.
Is the training that you guys are gonna plan on doing any similar to what you offer on your website on that USB stick?
It's going to have the same topics and everything, but it's going to be in the field. So, basically, what Tony and I do during a, live boot camp is we do 3 days. We end up doing everything from the door knocking that Tony would do. I end up walking around the house and show estimating and fix up and repair, inspection and stuff like that. We end up doing the mold inspection certification as part of the training that we end up doing, so that you can end up getting you can end up testing the properties that we may look at that are vacant, bank-owned properties that are listed, so that you can end up getting a discount on them by having mold show up in them. Tony?
Now, what I've always done is I've always believed that people in these rooms everything sounds good in the classroom, but then when you get out there, you freeze up, you're scared, you're going, man, I don't know, I mean, I can't remember everything I learned. So I've always felt hands-on training is what people need, because I became an aircraft mechanic by working alongside a certified mechanic. And that's how I got a job at Lockheed. And I learned how to install sliding glass doors by working alongside a guy that was teaching me hands-on how to do it. And he'd hand me the screwdriver and say, now you do it. So that's the way I do it with houses. I take you out there and say, let's go talk to some owners. Let's offer to buy their homes. And these don't even have for sale signs. It's just high grass, overgrown bushes, no pride of ownership. And we hit a bingo, because sometimes those people are either going through a divorce, or they've been divorced and now they can't make it, or a death in the family. We find so many probates before probate begins by going out in these neighborhoods. And we'll see a vacant house that's run down, and we'll ask the neighbor, we'll say, what's going on with that house? And they'll say, oh, that man died 2 weeks ago. Well, we're already talking to the relatives instantly, way before probate begins. And a lot of times they need some guidance on what to do. And so the best way to get these type of probate deals is before it begins, in my opinion. And we find those while we're out in the field. But the real deal for training out in the field is to say, here's a house, this is how you buy it. We talk to the owner, we make an offer, and we inspect it, and then we write up a contract, and this is how you close, and this is what you do once you buy it. So it's just real world experience. And ever since we started doing that, the success rate of people in these rooms has catapulted, because that's what they've always needed, is someone to take them by the hand and show them exactly what to do. Thanks.
And one of the biggest things that I want to point out is that everybody in the world these days, especially the younger generation, they think that they can press a button and find out anything that they need to find out. They get instant gratification. There's certain people out there that they may have kids, but they've never ended up seeing what it's like to end up having 3 screaming kids that you got to run out in the rain, put them in your car, each one at a time, strap them in, run back, get your groceries, and come back and end up putting the groceries in the car and everything. You're soaking wet, everybody's screaming and hollering and everything, because they're used to ending up sitting there on their couch, and they end up punching in what they want, and an hour later Publix delivers it to their door. They're used to ending up looking, oh, I want to know what does it take for somebody to do something on my roof? And they key it in, and it shows a little YouTube video of somebody doing, a roof and stuff like that. And they think that that's all there is to it. It shows you how it's done. It doesn't show you how to do it, okay? There's a lot to be said for hands-on training. I have been in 1 million classrooms And then again, I've spent millions of hours out there with Tony, with other people, that we've shared stages together. And I think that everybody that's been a national trainer, or even somebody that's been out in the trenches themselves, will tell you that you cannot learn real estate investing in a classroom, and you cannot learn real estate investing in on watching videos. You can get some of the basics. Now, obviously, we're gonna end up doing 3 days, and maybe the first day we do in a classroom, because that's where we can show you on a screen the paperwork that it takes, what's to be filled out, what actual things do you need to have put in there and everything to protect yourself. So, but then the majority of what we like to teach after you learn the basics and the fundamentals is to get out there and actually go to a property and actually go through the steps on what it takes and everything. And you know what? You can end up having the technique all you want, but no two deals are alike. Okay, there's something different about every deal. Some of the basics are all alike and everything. And if you wanna go out and invest in real estate by just learning the basics, then don't get somebody to show you how to do it. But every successful person I've ever met in my life has had somebody that was a mentor of some type, whether they admit it or not. They learned by watching somebody who was better than them at it do it. And the thing is that if you end up following somebody around and you duplicate what a successful person does, and they're willing to show you, you will end up doing that. And the thing is, the people that end up hurting in this business, or end up saying, well, this business isn't for me, they're the kind of people that will end up paying $1,500 for the latest iPhone to watch TikTok videos and stuff like that. But they won't spend $1,500 or whatever it is to end up having somebody who has been there, done that, and end up spending a little bit of money on some real education and everything. And you know, the funny thing is that we all make money back guarantees and all this kind of stuff. Well, you know what? How many people have paid literally thousands of dollars and went to college, and then their kid or whoever or you paid thousands of dollars for an education, even got a degree, and then you're not even doing what you ended up going to school for? Do they give you a refund? Hey, you know what? I ended up paying y'all for education. All right, you educated me, but I'm not using it, so I want a refund and everything. But the thing is the people out there, I don't understand. They will end up spending money on something that's absolutely, no value at all and everything. They'll sit there and get addicted to their iPhone, and they'll buy a new one every day, but it's too expensive to end up going to a training that might cost you $1,000. That $1,000 may end up changing everything that you do, and you might do 10 deals from that one training, and you might do one, but it might be one that pays you $30,000. It might pay you $5,000. It might pay you for the rest of your life. But the thing is you've got to end up prioritizing, and you're not going to end up. Success very rarely gets thrown in your lap. You have to go out and create success. And the people that are willing to go out and look for it and educate themselves to be in a better position to find success are the people that become successful. Because success very rarely knocks on your door and jumps in your lap and everything. I'm not saying that it never happens, because there are some people that get rich, on a fluke.
Pole dancers.
Old.
But anyway, but in a nutshell, we're gonna end up taking you out, and you're gonna watch what we do on a daily basis and everything, and that we've been doing for decades. You might get some basics and everything that you've seen somebody else do, but then again, everybody has their own twist on it and everything. I have my way of doing things. Tony has his way of doing things. Darlene has her way. He's got a million ways that he can leverage everything. I mean, so, you know, it's just however you end up wanting to learn to do it, and you end up picking something that appeals to you and everything. And you know, I know that my thing has always been rehab, so I don't try and be an expert at anything else, because that's where my expertise is. Now, have I ended up being around somebody who's an expert all my life that does something different? Of course, but I don't teach it because I'm not the expert and everything. Did I learn? Of course I learned. Do I know how to do it? I've done some of it and everything, but I'm not that person. So I channel my thoughts over the people that I end up getting educated by. And, you know, I copy what they do, and then I put my own twist on it and everything. But, you know, there will be some classroom training, but the majority of it's gonna be out there in the field. This is what we do when we look at a property. And it's gonna be everything from, like the first thing that Tony does is Tony will end up going through and looking at properties and end up making a list. And then once we end up getting that list, then he probably finds 3 times as many houses more than what was on that list that weren't on the list, just because he has a list to follow. Do you want to touch on
Just, you know, I plot a course. I plot a course of some properties, either properties with liens or foreclosures. But that's just to give us a route to follow. It gives us a reason to be out there. Because if I ever just go driving for dollars, after an hour, I get bored with it. But if I plot a course and say, I'm going to see these 10 houses today, it keeps me out there all day, and then I find 30 more distressed houses. So it's a routine I follow, and every time, no matter what state I'm in, Marietta, Columbia, South Carolina, I always get the same result everywhere I go, including Alaska and Hawaii.
Oh my God.
Hawaii?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was
Probably 4 times a year for a long time, we would go there and do door knocking. There's more hidden market properties in Hawaii than there is in the States. I mean, they're run down and nasty, but they all have a beautiful view of the ocean.
Oh, yeah.
Every one of them.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, there was a time that Tony and I, when we first started, we were doing some stuff, and we were staying at the Hilton Hawaiian Village, and it was overlooking Waikiki Beach and Diamond Head, and this was when they were filming Magnum PI, the original, and so that's how long ago this was. And they ended up having Tom Selleck's Ferrari parked in the front, and there wasn't anybody around, so Tony and I took turns jumping in the driver's seat and taking pictures. So,
I haven't seen those.
But you know, but we were what, in our 20s then.
I'm not one to ever start rumors, but it's been rumored that you guys had like matching Speedos. Is that true?
Something
Matching
like
mullets
that.
too.
Oh,
they were
the mullets.
what were they, silk and
Oh, jeez.
Silk Versace.
yeah, silk Versace. No, but actually I showed some people on the screen the last meeting that we were at. It was something that we had, and it was the Millionaire's Journal from the Dave Delgado era in February of 1992, which that's what, 32, 33, 30 some years ago and everything. And I put it up on the screen, and Tony and I were wearing silk shirts and silk pants and everything, looking like Ricardo Tubbs and Don Johnson, and you know, it had captions about us and stuff like that. And Tony was being interviewed by Dave on one of the TV shows on there, and so, you know, it was one of these people that was in the back of the room had said, before I brought that up, he said, you know, I'm just sick and tired of all these people saying that they've been doing this for 30-some years and everything, and, you know, half these people you don't even, you know, I mean, I'd just love for somebody to end up showing me something that they did 30 years ago and everything. And so I said, here, I can show you something, and I ended up plugging in the phone to my computer and put it up there and said, there's February 1992. Now, we looked a lot different.
Thinner. Thin.
Yeah, so, but, you know, it worked out. Now, want you to keep in mind that before we close this thing out, we're not just gonna end up saying, okay, the boot camp's the only choice that you got. Obviously, we're gonna be doing, Saturday classes, okay? So we're not talking about everybody's gotta come to a 3-day thing. We hope that you'd be interested in coming. It would be great and everything, but we're gonna be doing Saturday classes, everything from title search classes to, obviously, everybody's always asking me to do more mold classes, EPA lead-based paint classes, you know, just regular property tours and everything, where we end up going and do an estimating tour, where we take a price list and everybody gets a price list, and we walk around and estimate what's wrong with some vacant houses. And basically inspection, where we end up taking home inspection things. And that's why I have those shirts back there and stuff like that. For those of you who didn't notice the shirts back there, I sell shirts that say inspector on the back of them, because everybody used to come up to me and say, you know, every time that I end up looking at houses, somebody calls the neighbors, or the neighbors are out there going, who are you? What are you doing around that house? And all that kind of stuff. So I said, here's what I do, man. You know, I pay $10 for a shirt, pay another $7 and have something put on the back of it. And I sell them for $25 and everything. It says inspector on it. And you end up putting on this shirt and you walk around the house and people look out the window as they're going to, and it says inspector on the house, and you got a clipboard and you're walking around the house and they go, oh yeah, I know that property's been vacant because June and Joe, you know, ended up leaving, you know, 2 months ago or for whatever. And they go, oh, so that must be somebody from the house or the bank or the mortgage or somebody and everything. It says inspector and everything. So they don't call the police, they leave you alone, and they don't come out and ask questions and everything. So, you know, it's just a simple fix and everything.
You know, that reminds me of something. Just recently, I was door knocking in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Anybody heard of Cherry Hill, New Jersey? Well, you can't door knock there without a license. Yeah, you gotta have a license for door knocking.
They're starting to do that everywhere.
So since I was doing one of the door knocking boot camps, I went in there and applied. You have to apply at the police station. And they do a background check, they do a criminal background and all this stuff. And I thought there's no way they'll give me one, because I'm from Georgia. And they're not gonna want me knocking on their doors in Cherry Hill, but I got one, man. It was amazing. And you know, now I could actually, you know, put this on a necklace and wear it everywhere. I'm a licensed door knocker. What an accomplishment.
Everybody's got one of those.
Yeah, and so every time I go door knocking with Tony, since he's been talking about people with guns and everything, then I wear this one and everything. It's a concealed carry weapons permit and everything, good in 32 states.
Yeah, so if I'm knocking, they're not gonna mess with us because he's a concealed. But anyway, that door knocking thing, it has a number on it. It says when you're going door knocking, just call this number and let us know where you're gonna be. And then if any neighbors or people call, they say, oh yeah, he's cool, we know him, you know? So the police themselves say, yeah, he's supposed to be out there.
That's actually,
Because-
it's actually
Yeah.
catching from state to
That's
state.
right. So how many of you are actually, God, what was I gonna say? God, what happened?
It was a
Oh,
So
door
question on
knocking
that, what are you
Yeah.
thinking?
What?
Question on that last segment. So if you're like, I'm a real estate agent and one of my, co-agents, he knocks on doors. Sandy Springs, I think maybe it was Dunwoody, he got a permit like you did. But if you do your route and you're just knocking on, he goes from house to house to house to house, so it's pretty obvious. But if you're just driving a route and you happen to see a house and you knock on that one, you get back in your car, you drive more.
Yeah.
I think those are like two apples and oranges as far as having a door knocking permit. Would you concur?
Yeah, I would think so. And now I remember, that reminded me of what I was gonna say. How many of you know that when you're knocking on doors or you're in a neighborhood, there's people the neighbors are on Facebook telling each other, hey, there's people coming around. And this one state I was in, they were saying, there's people going around trying to buy your house in the neighborhood, and one of the people responded saying, tell them to come to my house. And he wanted to sell his house, he wanted to talk to us. And so those Facebook things can be beneficial sometimes. But they've called the police on us sometimes, and the police, they just come and say, what are y'all doing? We tell them the truth, and they say, okay, have a good day. And, okay, I guess we're done.
All right.
We'll still be hanging around answering questions